and welcome back to the Time Shifters podcast. Back here in studio with your hosts, Christopher and Matt. Matt, how you been?
I'm good. How about you?
Doing pretty well. Glad that you here in the Midwest, the weather is finally broken, and we are not being crushed by humidity and heat, and so I'm enjoying it, especially since the house's air conditioning has been out for a couple weeks. So I'm really liking the cooler weather.
That had to be rough. Yeah, fall showed up on cue.
Yeah, it's true.
Oh, it's the 22nd? Here I am.
Yeah, here it was perfect. Really enjoying it. So let's see, before we get into any news or anything like that, I just remind everybody our contact information. Find almost all these links over there at timeshifterspodcast.com. If you want to send an email or anything, send it to timeshifterspodcast@gmail.com and come and join our Facebook group. Just go to facebook.com and search for the Time Shifters group, and then follow us on Twitter at TimeshiftersPod and at Movies at the Mat. I think that's all of course, TeePublic, go catch yourself a shirt. I finally did buy a shirt. Chose a color, got the nice maroon, so I like it. Yeah, looks good. That's about all the important bits. So, to the news desk. What do we got going on?
Well, it'll have been out for a little bit, but we had some trailers drop since you and I last sat down to record.
That's true.
So I want to start with the not more serious one, but I guess the less action one, is they dropped the trailer for the movie Stan and Ollie, which is the Laurel and Hardy movie with John C. Reilly and Steve Coogan. And I remember when this movie got announced a while back, and then I completely forgot about it because no new info was coming across what I follow. And then the trailer had the misfortune of dropping the exact same day as the Captain Marvel trailer.
Yeah, it kind of got swallowed up there.
Right. And so the trailer came across my Twitter feed, and I was like, oh, this happened today too. And it looked really good.
It does. I just watched it. It popped up in your feed. It popped in a couple other people's feed. It was in Facebook. I'm like, oh, I need to check that out. And I never got around to it. And just before we started recording, I finally watched it. Yes, it looks incredible. I don't know as much about Laurel and Hardy as many people might assume I would, as much of a fan of old comedy and old movies I am. I never really dived into the Laurel and Hardy film, but I know of them. I've seen them, and these two, it's like watching them. I mean, I love it when actors, until they put up the names of these people, it was like, who are these guys?
Right.
I love it when actors can literally lose themselves in the roles that they're playing, and all you see is Oliver and Hardy. Laurel and Hardy. Stan Laurel, Oliver Hardy. There you go. That's all you see on this film, and it is amazing. It's kind of like, oh, where'd they find this lost footage?
Yeah, exactly. And it seemed interesting because it looks like it's diving into kind of the later half of their career. It's not. Maybe it'll touch on how they got together and met, but it seems as though this was the breakup.
Yeah.
And then the comeback.
Right.
And that seems like it'll kind of be one of those feel-good stories. Maybe it'll still kind of have a bittersweet ending. Not sure, but the trailer just made it seem as though this was two friends who kind of had a very bad falling out and then found each other again.
Yeah.
That sounds like a sweet story to tell.
Absolutely. No, it looks good. And yeah, I don't know anything about the history of a Laurel and Hardy, so I don't know how close this is going to be. I mean, I think this is going to be something where I'm going to have to actually maybe, read a book or something and actually find the truth, and then maybe I'll watch the movie first and then...
That's what I think I'll do. I'll watch the movie first, and that's going to make me want to go fact check the movie and read up on these guys and then learn a bit more and then check out just whatever I can find from their careers. But yeah, start with this movie.
I think what I may do, because it's really easy to do, is I may go back and watch some of their early films, or just watch some of their films before seeing this movie. Just kind of get a little bit more experience in the and the people and the characters that they played.
Nice.
Through their films. So, yeah, it looked really good. But yeah, so you mentioned it. Captain Marvel dropped.
Captain Marvel trailer dropped, and that looked so good.
It looked like a lot of fun.
Just from the moment that she crashes into Blockbuster Video.
I love that. Okay, we need to really let people know that this is set in the 90s. How do we do that?
Blockbuster Video. Alive and well.
That was brilliant. And for someone who worked at Blockbuster, they nailed it. It looked just like Blockbuster. They show it inside, like they even got the shelves right,
Makes
the
me
right
wonder,
color brown.
I wonder if they went and just found an old abandoned one, turned the lights back on, polished it up, and then just broke through the ceiling.
It's either set in the 90s or where was it? Oregon is like the last Blockbuster,
Right? They had to agree to be in this,
yeah,
and get their roof smashed. But yeah, it seems as though they're going to kind of tell, because it's going to be the origin story, but people are a little bit tired about superhero origin stories. So it seems as though they're going to kind of tell it different, that it's going to start with her already being a superhero, already having lived like her adventure out in space.
maybe some flashback to get the origin.
Right. And that what I was reading is that she's come back to Earth, but she actually is having a very difficult time remembering who she was before she became Captain Marvel.
Oh, so maybe we are going to be revealed her origins at kind of the same time as she is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that seems like a different take on the origin story rather than just sort of like ABC, now you've got powers, and then head out and fight and defeat the villain, and there you go. That this maybe like she's already been through some stuff.
Right.
And then we're going to see what looked to be an amazing de-aged Samuel L. Jackson.
That was incredible. I don't know. I'm not sure what the budget of the film is, but I got to think like a quarter of it is just like de-aging some of these actors.
Yeah. The thing that I noticed is they kept showing his face, but they didn't show him talk. And I wonder if that thing's just still kind of being worked on a little bit. Just like the facial movement and the mouth movement.
Yeah, that's going to be, you can de-age like a static photo.
Right.
But yeah, to get him actually moving and talking and not notice the softness and the manipulation is going to be tough. But
They did some good camera tricks in the trailer. If you go back and rewatch, you think you see him talking, but really he's just finishing a sentence as his face is turning away. And I'm like, yeah, it's probably not done yet. There's still some work to do.
Maybe they'll kind of limit it. Maybe if they edit it and film it just right, they can limit the amount of time you actually see his face while he's talking.
Which would probably be the better move to do.
Yeah. They also had a very brief look at what Clark Gregg as Agent Coulson with a lot of hair.
A lot of hair.
Thought that was fun. That was
very
cool.
prominent chin.
Yes. So yeah, he'll be in. He'll definitely be in the film.
Yeah,
it looks good. It looks like a lot of fun. Brie Larson looks incredible.
Yes, I'm such a big fan of hers. She's going to be great as Carol Danvers and as Captain Marvel. I look forward to that.
Yeah, so it looks good. It looks like the kind of origin story that it just looks like the kind of origin story that you want. I guess it's just that it's not just all, like you were saying, just by the numbers and go here, go here, go here. We're gonna get little bits and pieces, and we're probably not going to get it all. That's what I like. We're not going to find that, I remember everything.
Right.
No, probably not. She's probably still going to have kind of a Swiss cheese memory and fill in the gaps with other films, hopefully.
Yeah, that could be fun. And if you're telling me that the future of like the Avengers movies is Captain Marvel, Doctor Strange, Black Panther, and Spider-Man, to me that's more exciting than like the current lineup of, Iron Man, Captain America, and all of that.
Yeah, I love them all. I really enjoyed the Captain America and the Iron Mans and everything. Those are great, but I don't need them to always be there.
Right.
You've got so many other characters that you can play with, man.
Right.
Just, come on, give me something else. Those guys were fun. I'm not going to say that one's better than another or anything, that Black Panther or Spider-Man's better than the Iron Man, but it's okay to have more than one.
Yes, and
it's okay to leave them behind. We had them; they were fun. You don't have to recast them. You don't have to do anything. You can say they were there, but now we're going to tell these stories.
Right. And what's interesting is, you with like Captain America and Iron Man and the Hulk and even Thor to an extent, those were very much like punch, smash 'em up kind of superheroes, and now you're getting into Captain Marvel with powers and Spider-Man with his webbing and Black Panther with the technology and, Doctor Strange with the sorcery. Like, we're going to see very different battles. It's not just punch the villain into submission. It's like what can be done. And like we saw it in Infinity War a little bit, like when Doctor Strange took on Thanos. Like that was a very different kind of fight. And if those are the fights down the road with all of these other characters, that's going to be very visually pleasing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and you'll see probably a lot different villains too that they have to put them against, because no longer can I'm just a crook who found this technology and now I'm going to be evil.
Right.
That only goes so far.
Right. So I look forward for what's coming down the road with these new set of characters leading the way.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's going to be fun. We got any other news or any other trailers that
Not trailers, but the other news that broke, and again, it'll be a bit old when this comes out, but rumors keep swirling. There's no definitive, concrete answer, but it very much seems as though Henry Cavill is out as Superman.
I remember reading that.
Yeah. So apparently he was in talks to appear in the Shazam movie as a cameo, but with his, popularity increasing and he's doing more movies, he couldn't figure it out, and then the talks broke down, and it seems as though he's walked away.
Right. Yeah, it sounds like the talks broke down for the Shazam, but something happened with that it just cascaded and fell straight into the actual Superman films. Yeah. So, there's a chance that he's just going to walk away from everything.
Right. But then the day that came out, his agent said, "Don't worry, the cape is still in his closet." He posted this weird cryptic video where he's just sitting there wearing a t-shirt that says like Krypton Lifting Company. And then he's just like holding up a doll of Superman, and then he puts it down and he says nothing throughout the whole video. It was bizarre. And that was it. And he just had the caption that just said, "Well, today was interesting." No one knows what this means. And so people are starting to wonder, like, was this all just like fabricated just to kind of get people talking about the DC movies again?
Or was it a third party on the outside that just, that looked like maybe he's leaving the movies, the franchise. Right. Yeah.
But again, nobody just came out and said, "No, that's not true. He's in negotiation." So it's weird right now. But yeah, like I said, those movies are a mess.
Yeah.
I wish they could get it together.
I think Cavill makes a good Superman.
He's all right.
I think some of the writing, much like Affleck with Batman,
yes.
I think a lot of the writing has let him down.
Yeah, the writing, because he's a very good actor. He's a very dynamic actor. When you actually see a director in a script let him be him, he can bring a lot to a role. Whereas with Zack Snyder, it was just be stoic, don't say much, and have superpowers.
Yeah, but he absolutely has the look. I mean, there was a few shots when he first came out and they started showing some promo shots and everything. You'd swear you saw a little bit of Chris Reeves.
A little bit.
And I'm so like, wow. I mean, this is the guy that should have taken over the mantle right from the beginning.
Which he tried to do. He was part of that, test screening for Superman Returns. It just didn't go to him. Mm. But so he's wanted this role for a long time. I just wonder if he is over it at this point because it hasn't gone well. So who knows what is in store for that. I keep wondering if they're just, because they're doing all of these other unrelated one-shot movies, if they're going to kind of merge it all somehow. I don't know. But it's just weird.
Well, if he leaves, the guy that plays Superman on Supergirl, I'm sure would be more than happy to
I'll take
step in.
He's great.
He's pretty awesome.
I would like to see him play Batman. I think he has that Bruce Wayne look. And then I would love to see Nicholas Hoult be Superman.
Did you read the news about them going forward with a Supergirl movie too?
I did. Yeah, I read that. I don't know what's to come of that. I think it's strange because they have a very popular show right now.
See, that makes me wonder about the history or the future of the show.
Right, the show. Who knows if the show's getting cut? I know that they really live on the crossover. So if you cut any shows, you're limiting your crossover. Yeah, I don't know. It just seems all over the place.
Yeah. We enjoy the show, although I think it's gone kind of downhill since it moved over to the CW. I actually think it was a better show when it was on CBS.
Yeah, I think so too. A lot of that is budget. Mm-hmm. They had a bigger budget on CBS. I kind of cherry pick moments of this moment from the first season was really good, and this moment from the second season was really good. And overall, as a cohesive story, I don't think they've really had a best season.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. Yeah, I could probably pick out a few episodes. If I went through and my favorite moments, it'd probably surprise me how scattered they are between the two.
That's how it is for me.
Because I know the end of this last season on the CW, they kind of revamped the cast. Obviously, we still have the same Supergirl, but a lot of the John Jones has left, to wander the earth.
Yep.
They brought in Brainiac from the future is going to hang out, with the DOD or whatever they are.
Yeah.
There's been a cast change up and everything. That just it's when you start seeing people drop off and leave and be replaced, and it's or the ratings are. I haven't seen what the ratings are. Are the ratings in trouble? Are they trying to spice it up a little bit, trying to get people interested again? I don't know. I would think packed in with all those other CW shows that seem like are doing fine, you'd think it would be okay, but maybe not.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's what's going on there. It's all over the place. Last bit of news I have, I know you posted this, but I had seen it as well, that Apple is deleting purchased film content from people's accounts.
Claiming it's actually the studios. They're saying that the studios are saying, we don't want to offer that anymore. Right. Effectively like saying, we're no longer going to print this DVD. They're saying, well, we're no longer going to offer this digital file.
And they're taking it from people who've already purchased it, which I get because you're not purchasing the movie, you're purchasing a license, and if the studio or even Apple wants to say the license has run out, you don't get to have it anymore. I can understand that, but I also understand everyone's frustration. But this is why I still purchase physical media.
Yes.
No one's walking into your house and taking your disc.
And we could have the discussion about the whole, you're purchasing a license versus you're purchasing the digital file. I mean, I think most people think they're purchasing that file.
Right.
They're obviously not reading all the fine print that says it's just a license for access to that file. I don't really agree with it. It'd be like I bought the DVD and then the studio saying you have to turn that over. You were just you just borrowed it. It was just a license for you to own that, to hold on to that DVD for a while. That's kind of how I feel like with the movies, the digital files. I don't know how I feel about that. I don't agree with it's just a license. I think if you purchase it, the digital file, then that should be your property. Not your property to do what you will. I mean, it's for you, for your own home use, just like the DVDs or the Blu-rays. But I feel like that's yours. So, and obviously that's not what all the fine print and everything says when you bought it.
Right.
But
because I guess it's also about server space. And so even to say, those who purchased it will keep it for them, but then that server space that's no longer going to be bringing in a profit. So it sounds as though legally they can do this. I haven't heard anything about it being stopped or things being restored.
I'm sure legally they're on the side of right, but
right.
It is unfortunate. But yes, I am a physical media person.
Yep.
Even if I don't own it, I'll borrow it from the library just to know that it's a solid thing that I can put in my machine and watch what I want to watch.
And I've gotten in the habit of saying, like, okay, I'm going to buy it and I'm going to look for the version that has like the digital copy.
Sure.
But I fully understand that there's no guarantee that digital copy will stay. Because the things that you watch them on, I used to watch them on like Flickster. Flickster doesn't exist anymore, so I've had to like move my library over to Vudu. But what if Vudu doesn't exist anymore? So it kind of all comes down to that. Like, I can't control what I have access to, and so it's very possible that I will lose that entire digital library, but I'll still have my discs.
Yeah, you're always going to have it, and you're always going to be able to throw it into well, I guess a lot of laptops and stuff don't have drives anymore, so
I still got my player. Get a generator, and I'll just keep going when the apocalypse hits.
That's right.
So that's it.
All right. Yeah, that's it. That's the news. Okay, we'll go ahead and take a break and listen to a promo for another podcast. And when we get back, we're looking at, what year was this?
1985.
1985's The Return to Oz.
We asked the man on the street what he thought about the After Movie Diner website and podcast, but sadly he had never heard of either and was on his way to the doctor's to have a mole removed, or it could have been a badger. He wasn't sure. It felt bigger than a mole. Also, he wasn't sure how it got up there in the first place. Anyway, we asked all the famous people, like Michael Ironside, Fred the Hammer Williamson, Ted Raimi, Barbara Crampton, Cynthia Rothrock, and so on, that they've interviewed over there on the After Movie Diner website and podcast, what they thought about the After Movie Diner website and podcast. But most of them said that if we quoted them, we would be hearing from their comical southern lawyers complete with bow tie, meat gut, and brow mopping handkerchief. So instead, we say who cares what anyone thinks of you After Movie Diner website and podcast. You are awesome just the way you are, so don't you go changing. If you want to see for yourself, go to aftermoviediner.com or find the After Movie Diner podcast on Blog Talk Radio, iTunes, Stitcher, and wherever podcasts are found. The After Movie Diner, doing it their own way since 2011.
All right, we are back. Return to Oz, 1985. First time watch for me.
Yep.
you were familiar with the film. You've watched this quite a bit, of sounds like.
Yeah, I saw it when I was a kid. I was maybe like 4 or 5 years old when I first watched it, and yeah, it made an impression.
I could see where it would on a young child.
Because that's what it was marketed as. It was marketed as, hey, it's a kid's movie. It's a family film. And to this day, my sister and I say this is the first horror movie we ever saw.
Yes. I would, I could see for a young child, that is exactly what this movie would be.
Terrifying.
It's terrifying. I remember people talking about the original Wizard of Oz and the flying monkeys and the witch scaring them and being regular terrifying.
Yeah, that was never scary to me as a kid. And I saw that when I was very young, too.
Interesting. But the Wheelers and the
Wheelers and Mumby and the heads, and
a little disturbing.
You know, and then you get older and then you start to realize they're gonna give her electroshock therapy. I'm still scared.
Yeah. Let's start out about this. Now, this was interesting. It is kind of marketed as a sequel.
It wasn't. No, actually, the people who created
it was assumed it was a sequel to the original, although it was marketed and created to be just another telling based on the books.
Right. That's how so it was written and directed by Walter Murch, who really is mostly like a sound editor and a film editor. But this was something he really wanted to do, and I was looking into him a little bit, and he helped write the screenplay for George Lucas's original THX film.
Oh, wow.
And so he's got some good writing credits to his name, and then also by a guy by the name of Gil Dennis, who doesn't have much of a career I could find. And then, Walter Murch directed it. And so it was his idea that he really wanted to go into that darker, more sinister tone of the L. Frank Baum books. And he met with the person who was the head of Disney at the time, and the guy said, will you tell me something that you think, that you want to work on that we would like to do? And he said, I think there should be another crack at the Wizard of Oz kind of stories. And they were like, yeah, because we actually we purchased the licenses for all of those books years ago, and they're about to run out. Let's do that.
Perfect. Perfect timing.
And so rather than tell that story that everybody knows, the MGM movie's so famous, why try to redo that?
Right. No, I think that was a good call there. You don't want to do a remake of Wizard of Oz. That you are only going to fail.
Right. So let's just go to the next part and then kind of, but because the one was MGM and this is Disney, it's not a sequel. It's not even like a spiritual successor. It's just we're going to pick up at this part, because everybody knows what had happened, and even if it's different in tone, it's still its own movie.
Yeah, apparently this was based on the second and the third book in the Oz books, and so. But I guess that's the trouble I have with it. Is yes, it's not a sequel, but there is no way that they could successfully convince people that it wasn't a sequel.
Sure.
And so you can't help but, I'm sitting there watching it, and I can't shake that this is a sequel, and are you kidding me? Because in your head, you're going, okay, so they have done a sequel to one of, arguably the world's most beloved musicals, and they're going to start by giving Dorothy electroshock therapy.
Exactly.
What the F are they doing?
Within the first 10 minutes.
Yes. You're just like, wait, what?
Right. And that's why I love this movie. It makes no apologies. It goes right into that tone of what my understanding of the books are. And when it came out, by people who were big fans of the books, praised it for kind of following that darker tone, and that you think this is for kids and then it's not for kids. And
no,
it goes right into that. And that's what I love about it, that it's going to tell kind of just this old gruesome fairy tale.
And it's done, I should mention, too, it's done with an even younger actress than Judy Garland was in the original, or in the MGM Wizard of Oz. Fruza Balk was only 11 years old.
Yeah, and this is her first film, and a lot of people know her as, from The Craft.
Yes.
And you can see how this kind of kickstarted her career, because she's done a lot of dark roles since then.
Has. Yeah, this stuck with her, I think, as much as it stuck with you.
So, first time watch, though, overall, what did you think? Since you had never seen this before,
it's
sure. Very different.
Once I kind of left this is a sequel thing behind and kind of went, okay, this is based on some books. These are based on stories that I haven't read, and I was just kind of watch the film and let it kind of wash over me and everything. No, I liked it. I mean, it was the plot. It's pretty simple.
Yeah.
Once you get past you got to go. Once you get past the disturbing hospital and the electroshock therapy and everything, and she gets to back to Oz, the plot gets pretty simple. It's just you react to circumstances and get pushed further along. You know, the character gets pushed further along to the end of the end of the film. I was most impressed by the visuals. Yeah. Visually, this movie is incredible. I mean, I think that the attempt at our last film we talked about, The Dark Crystal, where I think they tried for really great visuals, and some of them I think fell a little short just because of the technology or what they had available. This one, I think whatever they were going for, I think they surpassed.
Yes.
There are some dated effects. You can tell the green screen and some, CSO kind of stuff or whatever. There is a little dated, but visually, though, it's just an amazing visuals in this film.
Yeah, great use of like puppetry and animatronics and claymation, all just kind of seamlessly going together.
That impressed the heck out of me. That was incredible. I don't know exactly how they did that, but it's kind of like, did
they just stuff a real chicken?
Yeah, it looked really good. That was impressive.
Yeah, and I kept looking into it. I was like, was the Jim Henson Company involved with this? And I couldn't find anywhere.
Well, I think so. Brian Henson, at least, was one of the people behind, I think, Pumpkinhead.
Jack,
yeah. And so I believe the Henson Company was.
Okay, because, it's top-notch. It's phenomenal. Yeah.
Because I think by that time they were they part of Disney by that time? Had Disney bought Henson by that?
I don't know if they had bought them, but I know they were involved. I mean, Disney had wanted Henson forever.
Right.
So, yeah, I definitely think they were somewhere involved. Mm-hmm. But, yeah, there's no, definitive, in the Jim Henson production.
Yeah, no, there was none of that. But,
right.
No, I did see credits of Brian Henson, assuming it was the Brian Henson was involved with Jack, but maybe he was just working for Disney, as a puppeteer or as a stunt actor or something like that.
It has that top tier Henson production kind of quality to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And TikTok is phenomenal.
I had to look. I'm watching. I was like, how in the world does he
move?
Apparently, they had to have the stuntman was upside down and with his legs crossed behind him. So he was actually walking on his hands.
Get a contortionist in there.
Yeah.
TikTok's my favorite character in this movie. The voice, who does his voice?
There's a couple different people that involved in almost all the characters.
Yes. Sean Barrett does the voice of TikTok, and his voice and the way TikTok moves, the way just his design, even that copper kind of color he has going on, and the mustache, and
I love the little mustache that would sort of move. That was
up and
his
down.
Really only emotion was his mustache.
The blue of his eyes, and even how when he has to fight, he's just spinning around real fast. Every little facet of TikTok I love. Mm-hmm. But yeah, to kind of take this from the beginning, it's supposed to be set 6 months after Dorothy's returned from her first trip to Oz.
Right.
Everyone thinks she's just made it up.
Yeah, I got a whole different view about Auntie M and Uncle Henry there.
Yeah. Uncle Henry's depressed, but they never really address how or why. Maybe it's because his farm's failing, but he's just sort of fallen into a depression. He won't fix up the new house, and no work is getting done, and now they have to.
They do it in passing where we're saying that he had a broken leg, but it's mended, but he still just sits on his butt and doesn't finish the house.
And they're still paying off the house that got pulled away, the house that they're working on now. Mm-hmm. They've got troubles. And oh, by the way, Dorothy can't sleep because she's still thinking about this wonderful place that she just came back from.
Right.
So rather than anybody say, because it's supposed to be a couple of months before turn of the century into 1900, rather than anyone say, well, she went through something traumatic. She got pulled along in a tornado. Somehow she survived. She just fabricated the whole thing to cope with the trauma. They're like, nah, let's electrocute her and see if that helps her fall asleep.
Yeah, we'll see if we can just erase those bad nightmares.
Like, the next step is let's lobotomize the kid and just stick her in a cell. Like, that's the third movie.
Yeah, so I'm not a big fan of Auntie Em and Uncle Henry here.
And they're all okay because it's also that part of like electricity's still new and it's exciting, and Dorothy doesn't have that back at her house. They just do everything by candlelight,
right? And
so they all just trust this doctor of like electricity. It's the future. It's going to do everything, and there's electricity in your brain, and we're going to set your brain, balanced again. And because there's even the part where like she's in her, because she's been committed to this hospital, and she's in her room and she turns the light switch on and it scares her for a second. She's never seen that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So she's in there, and then there's this other girl who's a patient that's in there, and you don't really know what's going on. Right.
The girl, who was the girl? Because she just sort of magically appears.
Right.
Yeah, you don't see her come in the door. You don't see her leave the door. She's just always there.
Right. And then the nurse is terrifying. The way she's dressed, she looks like she's got a knife. Right. And so it's the night where they're going to give her electroshock therapy, and it's all the way to the part that the things are on her ears, the machine is on, his hand is on the frickin' switch, and then the power goes out because there's a storm coming.
Right.
Because that's when you want to mess around with electricity, is when there's a lightning storm going on.
Frankenstein won't have been filmed for another 30 years, at this point.
So you hear moaning from like the basement of this place, and so apparently there's like some kind of like
damaged patients.
Patients who've been damaged is how it gets worded when that girl
by
shows
the
back
mysterious
up.
girl. Yeah.
Yes, she shows up. Yeah, patients who've been damaged, which I thought was a really interesting line of like, they didn't come in that way, but that's how they are now. So they escape in the commotion. The nurse chases them. They jump in the river. It seems as though the girl drowns. Dorothy gets in a crate. She wakes up and she's in Oz, and the chicken's with her for some reason. I guess the Bellina, who's great.
Yeah,
I love her. She's very sarcastic and everything.
Yeah, who can suddenly talk. Yeah,
yes, and that's how
Bellina the chicken from the farm is suddenly with her. And can talk.
And that's how Dorothy knows she's in Oz.
Mm-hmm.
And right away, they let you know this is not the Oz from MGM, because there is a desert that if you touch it, it will kill you.
Right, yes. Dorothy is much more knowledgeable about Oz than you would have gotten the impression. That's where you finally, like you said, that's when you realize, okay, this isn't the Dorothy we know.
Right.
And this must be the Dorothy from the book, who experienced much more time in Oz than we did.
Mm-hmm. So they make their way. And I like this Oz more than the other one. There's real danger to it. It's not just like, oh, the trees are going to throw apples on you. It's like, no, if you touch the desert, you're dead.
Right.
And the desert surrounds Oz. So Oz is really just sort of like this oasis.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, I love the lunch pail tree. Who doesn't want that in their backyard? Just go grab one. Hey, a ham sandwich.
Don't pick a green one.
Right.
Make sure that it's ripe.
And so they discover the Yellow Brick Road has been like demolished, and she runs all the way up to the Emerald City, and it's in ruins, and everyone's been turned to statues, and even that look of like how, and they don't even call him the Tin Man, he's the Tin Woodsman. I like that more, and I like his design more than the design in the MGM one.
The spindly legs and the more robotic.
And I get it. There's like 50 years between these films. Sure. You could do more, but just the fact that he is like a full Tin Woodsman and not a guy whose face was spray painted.
Right.
And the Cowardly Lion is a lion. It's not a guy in a lion suit. It's a full lion. And then there's a bunch of like headless women in a circle. And then the Wheelers show up.
Mm-hmm. Wheelers are very creative.
Yes.
It actually has me a little curious to read the Baum books and find out how much of this really comes from L. Frank Baum. Because the Wheelers are, they're just, I don't know. First they start out and you see these horrific faces, but it turns out that's just their helmets.
Yep.
They lift their heads and
they're worse.
They're actually worse. They're just manic people with these long arms and legs have wheels at the end of them.
Yeah. And that's part of that whole, like you were saying, of the design was better than like the Dark Crystal, because like when they saw those like those walking things in the Dark Crystal. You could see how it was just people on stilts and it was clunky. Clearly, like, their arms are like they're holding on to some kind of thing that connects their hands to the wheels, but it's very seamless. It just looks like they have these 8-foot-long legs and arms with wheels on them, and they get around. Like, they're really skating around out there. I wonder how much that took to practice.
Yeah, no kidding.
And and the sounds of the wheels, which is the sound of the stretcher from the hospital. It's that whole, like, you were there and you were there. She's seeing bits and pieces of what's going on. And yet they're terrifying, and they're laughing at her, and they're just slowly creeping in. And
yeah, and more to your point too, the head wheeler is the same guy that played the orderly at the hospital. So you get a lot of that same crossover.
So she's literally like trapped in a corner, and they're gaining on her, and they're creeping in on her, and you don't know what they're about to do. Are they just going to bring her somewhere? Are they going to kill her?
Right.
What's going on?
Eat her.
Right. Anything. And that's the other part that makes this movie scary is they put a lot of what ifs in your head and never answer those questions, and you're just left to panic.
Yeah, fortunately, though, she had a key that she found on her farm, which she thinks was sent by Shooting Star by her friends in Oz.
Yes.
But this key is from Oz and fits this lock that's in this corner and lets her find a sort of a secret room, I guess, where she discovers her first new friend, which is the TikTok.
And I just love how, he's the Royal Army of Oz all by himself.
Yep.
And he's got 3, because he's not alive, he's a machine, and he's got these 3 wind-up things on his back. One is for his thinking, one is for his speech, and one is for his action. And I just like how she's like, well, I'll turn on his thinking. I wonder what he's thinking about.
I'll turn on the speech so we can find out.
And so he fills her in that that the Scarecrow was King of Oz, and that there was an attack from the Gnome King, and he was put in there, told to wait for Dorothy, and then his gears wound down, and then he's been there ever since and didn't know what had been happening until she turned him back on. So they go out. TikTok fights off the Wheelers in the coolest way I think could have been done, is holding one of them by like the throat. And then they get taken to the woman who's now ruling the Emerald City.
Was it Mumbi?
Mumbi. Princess Mumbi, who just sits in her castle all day, playing her mandolin. Creepy as hell.
Yeah. It's a little weird. You walk in and you're like, mandolin?
Right. And then she's just sitting there, and she's got like these metal spikes coming out of her dress.
And it's fantastic. The actual palace and everything is amazing.
Beautiful.
And it's all gold and mirrored. And I will admit, I kept watching, waiting to see a mistake.
Right.
Where's the film crew?
Where's the camera?
Yeah, where's the camera? And I didn't.
I've been looking for years, and I've never seen one. So Mumby is kind of like aloof at first when Dorothy's just saying, like, we're looking for the Scarecrow. What's going on? This, that, and the other. And she's like, come with me. And, your friend the chicken and your army man, he can stay here. And she brings her into this corridor.
Hall of heads.
30 heads just sitting, and they're alive.
All looking at her, watching as they go by.
They're each behind a glass door, and that was probably the part when I was a kid that scared me the most. That I was just sort of like, this isn't right. I feel weird inside. And she takes off her head and she puts on a new one, and you realize that's what the heads outside are. She's collected heads, and she wants to collect Dorothy's, so she's going to throw her into the tower and let her get a bit older, and so she can have her head. Okay.
Yeah.
TikTok tries to save the day, but his action runs down because he had spent it fighting the Wheelers. She's in the tower, and that's when she meets Jack, the Pumpkinhead, who doesn't know. Well, he knows how he got there, but he knows he was made by the woman that he calls his mom, but he never met his mom because his mom just sort of put him together to scare Mumby. Mumby did get scared, but then decided to bring him to life with her powder of life, and that gives him the idea to take this big moose-looking thing that's a gump and try to make a flying couch by bringing it to life.
Which, I'm sorry, the talking headless moose.
It's a gump.
Bodiless moose, I should say. The gump, yeah. That alone is disturbing, too.
Yes.
The whole idea Like, oh, well, I was in the forest and heard a loud noise, and now I'm here. Huh? I'm like,
shot.
oh my gosh.
Those are the parts that as a kid I didn't notice, and then as an adult I do. And so it's still a scary movie for different reasons.
Yes.
But the part that scared me as a kid and the part that still scares me now is she has to go get the powder of life that's in the head door number 31, which is Mumby's original head, which is kept behind a mirror rather than glass. And I wonder if that's like a whole thing of like Mumby actually hates herself.
Yeah.
She doesn't want to look at herself. There's Mumby's head.
I have to admit, I was like, I'm not even sure I want to see what's behind that door. It's like, this is going to be gross or something, isn't it?
And so it's her, and all the heads are asleep, and so she's creeping along. The suspense is so through the roof for this scene. Like, what were you thinking as this was going on?
Well, like I said, I was wondering what in the world is going to be behind this door. First, she had to do she had to, very gingerly get the key from Mumby, who's sleeping headless.
Sleeping headless and snoring.
Yeah.
I don't want to know what's going on there.
Yeah, I don't know what that is. Maybe
it's just
that was
a flap.
that wasn't snoring. I don't know. But and then she has to creep down this hallway, try not to wake all these heads because she doesn't know what these heads will do. Was this going to be like a Portrait of Dorian Gray moment where she's going to open and find this desiccated skull or something in there?
All scary because what they did was scary. That would have been scary. A stump. I don't know anything. Just all of it. Because the tension for me is always through the roof in that scene. She goes to get the powder of life, accidentally knocks something else over, and the head wakes up and delivers the scariest way of saying Dorothy's name ever. And so all the heads wake up. The headless body wakes up. She gets the powder of life. But Dorothy locks the cabinet, so it takes the body a while to get the head free. But yeah, that's Mumby's real head, so that's like her most vicious personality.
Right.
They bring the Gump to life. They get on the Gump, and it has like palm leaves?
Palm leaves, yeah.
For wings, and then they fly off to the Gnome King's mountain. They get there. Mumby,
I liked they couldn't finish in time because TikTok just started mumbling and wasn't making any sense because his thinking wound down.
Right. And I like that part of when Jack is like, if his thinking is off, how is he talking and moving? And Dorothy goes, happens to people all the time, Jack.
Yes.
I'm like, she's a very insightful child.
Yep.
And so they fly out there, and the Gump isn't that well put together, so they almost crash. But they just land on the mountain, and that's when they meet the Gnome King, who actually kind of has a valid argument of, he's mad because all of the emeralds in the Emerald City are his.
Right.
They were taken from his mountain.
I like how he turned, Dorothy wants the stuff back. If he steals something, you should return it. He's like, oh, really?
Right.
Yeah. So you think if someone steals something from somebody, they should return it.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is his whole argument. So he just took his emeralds back, but in his getting them back, he also decided to, get some revenge too. But you don't know where his power came from, and then she ends up inside the Gnome King's inside the mountain, and then we see the Scarecrow for a second.
Right.
Again, great design to the Scarecrow. And he vanishes, and the Gnome King reveals himself, and he says that he turned the Scarecrow into another little knickknack inside his mountain. And he explains that he just took back what was rightfully his and punished the people for stealing from him. And then all of her companions meet up with her, and then he reveals that he has the ruby slippers, that when she went home, that's why they didn't go with her. They fell off, and now that's why he's powerful. He's got the most powerful magical object in all of Oz. So he decides to play a game. Go inside, his nice little treasure trove of stuff. Everybody gets 3 chances to discover where the Scarecrow is. Put your hand on an object, say Oz, and if you guess right, the Scarecrow will be returned, and if you guess wrong, you're going to become one of the objects.
Be a knickknack.
And with each time one of them fails, he's becoming more and more human. And I love those transitions of he's full claymation, he's half claymation.
The makeup was amazing
Yes.
at the end of that.
And then it's just the actor, and it's the guy who played the doctor. He's the Gnome King, and he's just got clay and paint on his face, and his eyes become real.
But it looks, the makeup is so good that you really can't. It's like, where does one stop and where does one begin?
Yeah.
You know, where does the makeup stop and the prosthetics begin? Is he claymation? I mean, it's all, yeah, it's all done. It's like, this is what like really good CGI today would look like.
Yeah.
And this was done in mid 80s with practical effects.
Yes.
Really impressive.
Very impressive. So Dorothy's the last one to go in, and she just by chance discovers that everyone who's been turned into an object, the object is green. And so that starts zapping the Gnome King of some of his power and starts turning him more and more into a rock person. He gets angry because this was supposed to be a rigged game that she's figured out. So he attacks, and he's about to kill them all, and she's slowly finding different green objects. She gets the Scarecrow first, and then she gets the Gump back, and then she gets Jack back. So he's going to go eat them because he's a monster. Mm-hmm. He eats the couch of the Gump, but they pull the head off. And then he goes to eat Jack, and throughout the whole movie, the Gnome King and Mumby and even the Wheelers were upset that Bellina the chicken was there, but nobody said why.
Yeah. Through the entire film, there was like this anti-animal stance.
Anti-chicken.
It almost seemed like animal, period. Like
Really?
No one wanted any animals around.
So he goes to eat Jack, but doesn't know Bellina is hiding out inside his giant pumpkin head. She's terrified. Literally lays an egg.
And apparently eggs are poisons to gnomes. Who knew?
Who knew? Perfect little get-out-of-jail-free card.
Yeah, yeah.
And so it falls into the Gnome King's mouth. It's poison. He dies. She gets the ruby slippers from his crumbled corpse. Mm-hmm. And she wishes everybody back in the Emerald City restored. And at the last minute, they find the knickknack for TikTok after they've escaped.
I was wondering about, like, oh my
Where's
gosh,
TikTok?
did they actually just kill off a character here?
Yes. You're scared for a moment.
Yeah.
And then he's on the Gump's, like, antler. Mm-hmm. And
it was just some sort of like a ribbon of an award ribbon or something
which
like
makes
that.
sense.
Yeah.
He's the Royal Army of Oz, and then it's like a little Medal of Valor. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, and then everyone wants Dorothy to be the Queen of Oz, and that's when finally, because throughout the movie, you were also seeing, like, this weird shape in the mirrors.
Right, which I assumed was the good witch of the North or whatever she was. I forget.
Glinda?
Glinda the good, Glinda
no,
the
she
witch.
never shows up in this movie. She never even gets mentioned.
I assume that's who that was.
Right.
Through the whole film.
Had a look about her. But it's the girl, and she's in the mirror, and then she says to Dorothy, help me come through the glass, and she helps her walk through, and it turns out she's Jack's mom. She's Ozma, the rightful Queen of Oz. So she takes her place on the throne, and Dorothy says she has to go back home, and Ozma sends her home, and then she just wakes up alongside the riverbed.
Right. And found by Aunt Em.
By Toto.
Oh, yeah,
Toto finds her.
Yeah.
The cutest dog ever.
It's all right. It's a terrier. I'm not a big fan.
Oh, I was. I love that dog.
Yeah, well, Auntie Anne had come to pick her up after she was supposed to have this procedure, and then she promised that she would bring Toto with her to pick when they picked Dorothy up. So, yes, Toto finds her, Aunt Em finds her, Uncle Henry is there. It turns out the hospital, we'll call it a hospital, was struck by lightning last night and burned to the ground.
And that the doctor was the only one that died. Much like the Gnome King.
Yes.
And that we don't get why, but the nurse
is being hauled away by the police.
Right. And then Mumby had been in a cage back in Oz.
Right.
And so it does that whole thing of, did she imagine it? Did she dream it? Did it really happen? And only recently I've kind of come up with this theory that Dorothy's world and Oz are parallel dimensions where everybody has a copy on the other side. And what happens to one of you on one side will affect the you on the other. So if the Gnome King died, that's what killed the doctor. If Mumby gets arrested, then
you have to arrest
the nurse. Mm-hmm. Something, isn't right. And that Dorothy's other self is Ozma. Okay. That's who that is. That's why they have that connection. That's why they're able to see each other. Because there's a part where you see the shape of Ozma running around in Mumby's mirrors, and Mumby even says, like, "Oh, there you are." Like, "Oh, I almost forgot about you." Mm-hmm. Well, no one knows who you are. No one even knows where you are. Makes me think like she got banished to the real world, which is why Dorothy was able to see her on and off. But she still has some power, maybe. 'Cause she's not really from there. And
at least be able to pass through a door.
Right. And that only Dorothy was the one that could physically bring her back because they have that parallel connection. And to me, that's just kind of how I've look at it, that Oz is a real place and everybody has a doppelganger on the other side.
It makes some sense in a way, because every time that Dorothy meets the girl, we first see her in a reflection.
Yep.
Before we actually see her in the room. So it makes sense that she's coming through somehow.
Yeah. And she's being sent through, and once she restores her, that kind of restores this sense of balance, and that's why Dorothy has to go back. You can't be on both sides.
Right. Interesting. I actually, until the end, I was thinking, are we going to end with me wondering, did maybe this whole thing is a dream brought on by the electrocution?
That she wakes up in the cell.
Not even wakes up. It's just like, if this movie ends with her like in Oz amongst all her friends, I'm going to be sitting here wondering if, no, the lights didn't go out. He flipped the switch.
That would have been the darkest of endings.
Yeah. That's where I was kind of going with this.
Yeah. So any highlight scenes, any moments that we either mentioned or didn't mention?
Not that I think. I think you mentioned it, and we kind of talked about it all. The effects were brilliant in this. Some of the stones, actually, the animation on the stones. You see the faces as they watch, and it's just simple animation, or maybe a claymation sort of blended in, done really well to the point. It's just, like I said, it's a little dated because of the time it was made, but it really still very effective.
Yes.
I really like that. The look of the Wheelers was really creative. The Gnome King and all the effects there, I think, were fantastic. Yeah, no, just all the visuals I thought were just top notch. There really wasn't anything that I saw and just felt didn't live up to kind of like what I just saw before. It still holds up.
Yeah.
Like I said, there is the green screen issues and stuff, but
yeah, because when she first gets to Oz, when I was rewatching it and she starts looking around, I just went, "Oh, look at this painting."
Yeah. But you can definitely tell when they were doing some the heads and picking up the heads and everything. The telltale outline is there,
but it
doesn't quite marry up exactly when she sets it on the pedestal. It looks a little off and everything. But those are kind of things that maybe certainly if I was younger, I wouldn't have picked up. And it's something that I pick up now because I watch these films and I can't help but my technically critical eye on some things. I pick that kind of stuff up. But outside of that, I mean, I certainly wouldn't knock the film for that.
No, because it doesn't really burst that bubble at all. It doesn't take you out. You notice it and then
you're
move
in a
on.
Magical world. Gosh only knows what things are going to look like and how things really work. You know, I thought Fairuza Balk was really good for an 11-year-old girl. I think she did an amazing job.
She plays Dorothy very well because she has those moments where she's scared. She has those moments where she's being brave, and she's very kind. She's sweet. She's well mannered. Like she curtsies
when she introduces.
And I really like the job. I love her as this Dorothy. Like I would have been on board for 2-3 more movies with her as Dorothy. Just seeing her grow up.
Considering the career path that Balk has taken, maybe it's time to revisit Oz.
as older Dorothy?
As older Dorothy.
I'd be down for that.
Yeah, absolutely. That might actually be interesting.
Get back into these just darker kind of Oz movies.
And you could make it, I mean, if you wanted to make it still sort of quote unquote family, you could, but if you wanted to actually go horror, might be the time.
Yeah, I think Oz as a horror is a great idea. There was actually a couple seasons ago an episode of Supernatural where they do that, and the Dorothy from the books is supposed to be L. Frank Baum's daughter, and she had been in Oz this whole time.
Gotcha.
And the Wicked Witch breaks out, and so Dorothy breaks out, and so Dorothy's in her 20s, and it has to do with this whole thing of time moves different in Oz. So it's only been few years for Dorothy, but it's been a century for everyone else, and you realize Oz is a terrifying place. Like, there's even a part where she's like, oh, those damn monkeys. I hate those monkeys. And then she just mentions other things, and you're just sort of like, Oz sounds like a scary freaking place that I never want to go to. And
exactly.
that would make a great series right now of just Oz the horrifying.
Yeah. No, I think maybe now's the time for something like that, and I definitely think it would work, and it'd be neat if they could tie it in somehow with some of the tales that have already been told. I feel like I was kind of coming in not knowing. You feel like this movie feels like it should be a sequel, even though it's not, and you feel like you're missing something, and maybe that missing something is having not read the books.
Sure.
So you really do come in just, I got nothing. You know, you're talking about things that happened in the past that we weren't a party to. We thought we were, but we're not. And that it's a while to get over that stumbling block.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that was probably like they could have explained her better why she was there, but I think that's why they threw Belina in there of she's going to explain things because they're really explaining it to us. If they could have said something like, why is my chicken with me in the hospital?
Right.
Something like that. But I guess because I watched it as a kid, so I didn't question it as a kid, so I don't question it now. Almost could have, like, after, if this movie had done well, because that was the other problem, is it bombed.
Yeah.
So they just...
Well, like I said, I can't help but think that there was no way they could convince people that it wasn't connected to the MGM film.
Well, the big problem was that critics came out and said that it's a good movie, but who is it for? Because it's not a kid's movie. It's too scary for kids. I don't know. I watched it when I was 6. I think I'm okay.
Yeah. I think it's the right amount of scary for a young kid. No, it is absolutely. I can see where a young child would be scared, but it's not the kind of scared that is going to have them, huddled in a corner in a ball of tears or anything like that. I think it's the right kind of scare. Yes, I believe there is a certain level of fear that a child should be, I think, exposed to when film and entertainment or whatever, because that can lead to a lot of fun.
Definitely.
And I think this film kind of it walks that line, and it balances itself perfectly, where it's a little bit scary for the kids, but it's not so scary that the parents can't sit there and explain, things to the kids. They don't have to try to. Well, you'll understand when you're older. No,
right.
It's nothing. Well, they're just actors, and they do this, and you roller skate. I mean, they can they can connect it to real things to help. Help the kids cope.
Yeah. So,
no, I think it's the right amount of scary.
I think the only thing that it would really scare a kid out of is going to the hospital.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, definitely don't take him anywhere to have his hearing checked.
Right, exactly. Because they put them on her ears. They don't put them on her temples. I didn't remember that until I rewatched it the other day. I was like, wait.
I don't think that's how that works.
Right, you're going to electrocute her. That's going to hurt a lot.
Uh-huh.
Your earlobes are going to be burned.
Yeah. No, I did enjoy the film. I did. I liked it. I don't know if it's kind of one of these movies that I will... go back to a lot or anything. I think it's one of these films that now I've watched that, and maybe I'll watch it again. I'm kind of curious. I wanted to sit down and watch it with the whole family and everything just to see what their thoughts were when we didn't get a chance. So maybe sometime in the future it might be something to sit down and get the view of a 13, 14-year-old.
Yeah.
See what
or
they
a whole
think.
bunch of them.
Yeah, maybe.
Movie party. Let's scare some kids.
Yeah, so, and of course he's twice as old as you were when you first saw it, but at this point, but I still would be curious to see what he would think of it. I definitely don't think it would be scary for him. No, so I think it might be fun.
What was interesting is because every time we're about to watch something, you tease it on the Facebook group, and we actually got some feedback.
Yeah, I was actually going to bring that up.
Chad had jumped in. He said, Matt reminded me of this film some months ago, and I can't believe I almost forgot it. Not really a children's movie, weird and disturbing. I never realized how much of an influence its imagery and themes had on me. And I really think that goes true for me, too. That, I got exposed to this at a very young age. And kind of from there on, I always gravitated to interesting imagery, tension, things feeling dangerous, the darker side of things. I've always been into that, darker tone. And he probably did start with this movie.
Very possible. I could see where that could happen.
And then he added, surreal storytelling is incredibly difficult to get right. I think Return to Oz pulls it off about as well as can be done. Often surreal stories are inscrutable to all but the writer. I'm looking at you, Donnie Darko. Describing Return to Oz, it sounds like a dream or a nightmare, but it still has a plot you can follow and a character you can relate to. Yeah, I agree with that. Do you want to read the rest?
Yeah, we should. Good. You got it up already, so. Steve Sullivan jumped in here that he says that he really likes the film. It's edgy and creepy, yet fairly true to the stories. More true than the beloved MGM film, at least in my remembering. Some great talent involved, and he hopes we liked it. So, yes, we did. And Scott Morris just chimed in that he's seen it many times, and he said he's seen this movie many times and has never seen Wizard of Oz. So I think that's probably beneficial, actually, for this film.
And surprising.
Yeah, that is a little surprising, actually. And Pete Quint just says that it's such a creepy film. So that's it. Yeah, Scott Morris actually hosts the Disney Indiana podcast.
Okay.
Where they review just Disney films, which they love it now because Disney owns everything. So now they get Star Wars and all the Marvel and everything. So I guess Wizard of Oz still falls outside of Disney for the time being. They haven't bought MGM yet.
Yeah, not yet.
But being that well versed in all those types of films and everything, it's kind of surprising that Wizard of Oz hasn't fallen in his player.
Now that I'm thinking of it, I don't remember who made it, but I remember also seeing like this animated Wizard of Oz show that I think was on like HBO in early mornings when I was like 9 or 10 years old. And it told this story of like, Dorothy's back in Oz. She's with the Scarecrow and the Tin Man and the Cowardly Lion. And like the Wicked Witch had like been brought back to life. And so it's kind of like round 2. I don't have like too many like specific memories of it, but I remember that being a little bit darker in tone as well.
Interesting. There's been a lot of Return to Oz, or things returning to Oz.
Yeah.
There is a Return to Oz that was a TV movie in 1964. Oh, here, Return to Oz, Tales of the Wizard of Oz TV series was actually from 1964, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if it had been rebroadcast at some point or another. So that something like that could be. But yeah, there's been lots of animated things that have gone back to the Wizard of Oz. There was a made-for-TV movie, I think Sci-Fi Channel did I think that one was like Tin Man, I think is what it was called.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
I seem to remember liking it. I have to go back and rewatch that. But I seem to remember that actually being pretty decent.
And that reminds me, because even in this movie, in Return to Oz, as she describes the Tin Woodsman, even that was creepy. She's just sort of like, oh yeah, he was out in the woods and he accidentally cut off his leg, and then somebody enchanted his axe and he just kept cutting off parts of his body until he was all made of tin. And I'm less like, that's a gruesome scene that I can't get out of my head now.
Yeah, that wasn't in the first film.
No, it was just sort of like,
that was in the book.
Right. He just started cutting off, like she's like, even his head was, and then like somebody interrupts her and it's just like, no, we can stop there.
We can stop now. Yeah, if that doesn't get you intrigued to actually read the books, and I think the book would be an eye-opening experience, because if all you're familiar with is the MGM, which
follow the Yellow Brick Road.
Yeah, I am. That's my that's the only Wizard of Oz I knew, and
opened a door.
Yeah.
Because it's a long book series. It's like over a dozen books. So there's a lot there. And I think after this movie came out and it didn't do well, they didn't like re-up any of their licenses, so the books are now in the public domain, so anybody can tell whatever story they want. And like we said, I think there's something there to tell in the horror genre.
Yep. So yeah, no, great film, and like I said, I think the only thing that goes against it is that you can't help but have the MGM in your head when you start watching it, and you have to like just completely disassociate the two, and it's a little tricky at first.
Yeah.
So maybe going in knowing that it's not a sequel, despite being called Return to Oz, maybe another name. I don't know what they could have done, but that's the thing you got to go in knowing, is that it has nothing to do with anything unless you've read the books.
Yeah.
So before we go, though, I do want to mention, or I did want to bring up Floyd sent in an email. This was actually a couple weeks ago now. He says, in my previous email, I said I was far behind the podcast. Well, since he didn't record for a month, I wasn't as far behind as I thought. And actually, I guess that means he didn't. This was probably just about the time that I recorded the interview with Henrik Kudo, so maybe he didn't listen to that. It's shameful. He should have. Says, I'm looking forward to seeing Patrick Stewart as Jean-Luc Picard again. Even though Chris doesn't like this decision to reprise his role, I'm glad you guys discussed it further and realized that he wouldn't take on his project without giving it a lot of thought. Yes. Even though Chris and I have differing opinions on a Star Trek Discovery, I will agree that the trend to make things darker and grittier gets old. So many remakes, reboots are guilty of this. Why do we need to see a darker and grittier version of something that was enjoyed by millions in its older format? That being said, I did like the story in Discovery, and I've heard that they plan on lightening things up for the next season and focus on the exploration aspect. I certainly hope so. It's been a while since we've seen that for any Star Trek film or series. As for Andromeda, which I brought up, I really enjoyed the series, except for the last season. I thought Kevin Sorbo did a fine job in the role. I will admit I liked him in Hercules better, but he still did a good job as Captain Hunt. I just wish that hadn't made that totally confusing last season. So I'm watching it on Comet, so maybe the last season will make more sense. Speaking of Comet, Space 1999 is now airing, and next September 12th through the 15th, Breakaway 2019 is taking place in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, celebrating 20th anniversary of the moon being blasted out of orbit. So, yeah. Floyd's in hog heaven there. That's pretty cool. Yeah, I was wondering. I saw that was on there that they were doing the Comet. I was wondering if they were going to be the. I think they just recently remastered the things to 4K or for a DVD Blu-ray release. So I wonder if Comet's showing the updated masters. That would be interesting. Again, that's another series where I think the visuals outweigh just about everything else about the series, at least for me. So, all right, but that's all I've got. Anything else? Nope.
That's it.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for listening. If you have not seen Return to Oz, I would recommend it. I do. Just go in knowing that, it may be different than anything else you've known.
It's not a musical.
Definitely no song and dance. No. But it was very interesting to watch, and the more I think about it, the more I think maybe I will revisit it again fairly soon. So that's going to do it. Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll talk to you next time. Bye.